right. Welcome to Breakthrough.
Welcome to our next episode of Breakthrough, and thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, happy to be here with you. We're not on the road this time. We're in the studio.
Yes, it's good. It was great to be out on the road and meeting folks, but it's good to be here and just like slow it down a bit, catch a breath.
Catch a breath. Just the two of us here for this episode to have an important conversation regarding the hurricane relief and just a prayerful conversation too. I think one of the things with doing this show is that the breakthroughs can happen out in the streets, Nuns on the Bus, Queen's Power, in those kind of environments, but they also can happen internally when you're receiving something news-wise, you're seeing something, and you're sitting there kind of being like shell-shocked by what you're seeing.
We've had two fierce storms, two hurricanes, pretty close to each other, and affecting many states, and then the lives and the ecology of the areas, really.
Yeah, and the time that we're recording this too, just to kind of give you a little bit of behind the scenes, Hurricane Milton is hitting Florida right now. And so by the time you're seeing this, the hurricane will have been over and the results of that, the damage will be more accessible and such. But we wanted to get this together here and have this conversation. One, we're going to point you to some hurricane relief options and ways to give back and things of that nature, but also just to prayerfully enter into the space to have a dialogue about how to receive this. I mean, this is like one of those hard things when you're sitting down, you're watching the news, you see a storm, and you just feel helpless.
You do, and to think that, well, that happened in North Carolina, that happened in Florida. Well, wherever it happens, it is impacting us as well, even though we're in a different state. Because as we know, the earth is a whole living system and it's connected. And these storms are getting fiercer and stronger.
Yes. In the title of my job title here, Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation. Integrity of Creation. We have a statement that's going to be going out soon from the Sisters of St. Joseph, and this one line here. These storms are proof that we are facing historical dangers to creation. The very integrity of creation for which we are to care for is in jeopardy. And then I want to just read this here. This is from John Rafferty of the Britannica Storm Report. This just came out in response to Hurricane Helene's destruction. Climate scientists noted that Helene's rapid intensification and overall severity was further proof of the effect of climate change on hurricane strength. Studies report that the Gulf of Mexico has warmed approximately 0.34 degrees Fahrenheit per decade since 1970, more than twice the rate of the oceans at large. The presence of such unusually warm water in the Gulf of Mexico in 2024 allowed Helene to grow exponentially fast and store enough moisture to release, by some accounts, as much as 40 trillion gallons of rain over the southeastern U.S.
Yeah, and I still don't think people fully understand climate change. As Pope Francis says, it's a road to death. And they say, well, it's warm. What are you talking about, climate change? You're not talking about the weather when you're talking about the climate,
Right.
And we saw, Earth, and we know Earth is a living system, and we saw great photos, before our eyes during the pandemic, because mountain ranges were hidden by smog and pollution, but when air transportation and other types of travel were curtailed, all of a sudden the sky was clearing up, because Earth is self-healing. And given the opportunity, she will heal itself if we allow it. And so then we become more healthy. We get healed as well.
That was good. I mean, you're bringing me back to those photos, and I think that was a breakthrough, I think, for a lot of people that maybe were still, this is all still, the dialogue around this is still so new for many people. And thinking back to when Pope Francis published his encyclical on climate and how harshly that was received, I remember being pretty surprised at how many people, I mean, the parish I worked in, I remember having a few conversations at the time, a few conversations with some folks, and I was really stunned by how they weren't so much against it. They just were like, there are other things that we should be worried about. And it was like, yes, no. Like, there's always going to be other things we should worry about, but I don't think we're understanding what this is. It's not just about, ooh, it's warm today. I can't wear a sweater in November. What, or I can't, it's not
Yeah.
just about your wardrobe decision making
Yeah.
here that we're talking about.
Well, and the concern, all concerns are connected.
Mm.
We
Mm-hmm.
will see that they do connect. So all right, so let's look at the climate. So you have greater floods. So then you have migration of people from their homelands. So then that becomes an immigration issue. Uh, you have drought, where farmers used to plant their fields, they can no longer do it because they don't have access to water. They're in drought conditions. So then you have food scarcity. So one impacts the other because it's one dynamic, interconnected living system.
Yeah, and the I saw a thing this morning about Milton hitting Florida, and there was 36 reported tornadoes as
Tornadoes.
the storm was like,
Yeah.
which they were even saying they're like, this is just it just shows how like insane this is all becoming of like these because they you call them hurricanes, and then there's like these superstorms within the hurricanes,
Hmm.
and it's just it's immeasurable almost.
And back in the day, tornadoes were something that was probably seen more in the Midwest.
Sure.
You didn't really get them in the Northeast and definitely not in Florida. But the number of tornadoes just with this one hurricane, it rips people's lives apart.
Yeah,
You
the
know?
damage is just
Hmm.
and that's another part of this too. This conversation is the relief aspect, and I've been very fortunate in my young career to have done a lot of storm relief work through
Hmm.
time as a campus minister, as a high school teacher, leading mission trips, and there's nothing more humbling than going to different places throughout the country. I'm thinking of Kentucky, been to Colorado, the Carolinas, Texas after a tornado in Beaumont, that was wild.
Hmm.
And you're just seeing the destruction and the way that these communities have to put themselves back together is
Right,
really humbling.
right,
It's
right.
just like,
Yeah, and so how many years ago did we all experience Superstorm Sandy?
yeah, seriously.
And it's times like this, it's good to recall those memories, to have a sense of how
Yeah.
our sisters and brothers in Florida, in North Carolina, are experiencing this now. And so we have a sense of what it is to walk in their shoes, and the importance of resourcing them, because they're innocent victims,
Yeah. And guess what? Walk in their shoes. Like, I don't mean to be like doom and gloom here, but like, we will likely walk in their shoes again.
Yes. And we are at a breaking point. And while Earth is self healing, she needs time to do that. And that's why, during the pandemic, there was some breathing room for her. However, we have to really live in a more mindful manner. And when you hear about, you know, the pull of fossil fuels, and what are some of the renewable resources? Because an extractive economy is not sustainable. And it does, we might not feel it because I'm getting everything I need or I want, but there's other people in the world because of that, they're living less.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean that we're you're trying to threaten people's livelihood by saying you can't have things. I think that's part of the to be a critic for a little bit here. I do have to say I think we have to also be critical of the way in which climate change has been presented to public. I think I'm younger, and in my experience of learning about this, there was a feeling in the beginning of it being like, hey, this is your fault, this is what you did, all these things, and it's like let's be nice to each other here. There's huge systemic issues at play
Mm-hmm.
here
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, I can't control the flight patterns and the way that planes are made or all these different types of things. Right? I can't control that. That's industrialization. That's history.
Right.
But I can control little decisions. I can just control. Okay, am I going to try to reduce my paper goods? Am I going to try to do these kinds of things? Um, and if you start to live in that kind of mindset of having those breakthroughs in
Mm-hmm.
your life,
Mm-hmm.
it starts to trickle down into just your general well-being.
Right.
You're going to live a healthier life if you start to
Exactly.
think like that.
And here's the thing is that we have had the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
And without it, we would not have had some of the modern technologies that we have now.
Yeah.
And if we knew then what some of the repercussions would have been because of it, I think we would have thought differently. The point is, now we know. And we have improved technologies,
Right.
And if we really learn how Earth is also self-governing, and we looked at, the rhythms and the technologies of Earth, if you will, we can begin to reverse that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad this is going this way. The Industrial Revolution and anything like that brings us to a point, but we're always going to get to that point and then say, investigate it.
Yes.
And investigate. And like, we always need to be doing that. Like, it's the same with our bodies. It's the same with like, health, all these wellness, all these types of things, mental health, especially now. We go forward, hit a point, say, what is this? Step back, and then figure out how do we work through that point. And that's how we have to handle climate change as well.
Yes.
In our own lives.
Well, and I think that's the important, that stepping back, reflecting, thinking about it, and come forward, with your next steps, not just with a new mindset, but a heart set, that, we are connected,
Yeah.
and what happens in one part of the planet is happening to me. And how am I making my decisions so that I'm living in a way that it's good for me? And if it's good for me, hopefully it's good for other people and the planet at large.
I want to mention that over 230 people have passed away due to Hurricane Helene, and more are being reported from Hurricane Milton. Although it seems that Hurricane Milton, the tornadoes seem to have done the most damage in that regard so far. But fingers crossed, prayers that there's a little bit more. There seems to have been a little bit more preparation for Milton that I think people really took seriously.
Yeah.
Not that they didn't take it seriously for Helene, but Helene just kind of came and I think shocked
the
everybody.
Turns,
It really shocked.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
Milton, there's been a little bit more calculation to it, and it seems to be following that course. I want to just speak to I mentioned it a little bit before. As a campus minister and in that experience of bringing students, one of the things we used to do all the time, we had a winter mission trip and a spring break mission trip. And we would always try to prioritize areas of need, right? But specifically, especially in the spring, we would prioritize an area that was hit by a storm. And so I mentioned into Texas, Carolina, the Superstorm Sandy, a bunch of different places, Colorado, Missouri. The most amazing experience of doing those trips was watching students encounter families that had just been through this. And most of the families we would encounter did have someone who perished, did have something. And I was always really amazed to see the grace that was there. I was specifically thinking of Beaumont, Texas, and going there and meeting some of the families and just feeling this resiliency, this real trust in the Lord, especially in these Christian towns, real serious faith.
And what a difference, that you show up in a present. That means the world to people who have just been through a catastrophic experience, but if we show up, clean up, grow up, wake up, and are there for one another, it'll make all the difference going forward. Presence. Yeah, it's important.
You ever hear this line? Ain't no gift like the present tense.
No.
Is that a good one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could take that. That's good.
Ain't no gift like the present
Ain't no
tense.
gift like the present tense. That is from Need to Breathe, one of my favorite bands. I think the song is called The Heart. What a lovely thing to sit with, right?
Yeah, and I like that. We do need to breathe,
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah.
That is important. When we talk about presence, though, we're talking about presence, that divine energy, that pulses through us, in us, and through us, and we need to breathe and take that in.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Likewise.
We have a statement that's going to come out from the Sisters of St. Joseph that will have resources for giving to both storm relief. The best way we had some people reach out to us and say, how do we help? How do we do this? We're going to go through, do our research, give you some resources, and then you prayerfully decide how you want to give, where you want to give, and what that looks like for you. We also have in here, this is exciting, 2 emergency animal relief funds too that are incorporated as well, because it's another piece of it. People leave their pets behind when storms happen and this horrible stuff.
Hard.
And
it's hard.
it's wild. And so that's another thing too. So if you're an animal person as well, that's another element. So be on the lookout for that document. And yeah. All right. Thanks for the time.
All right,
Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.